Look at her dress! The cruel whisper cut through the church like a knife, followed by stifled giggles. 8-year-old Amara Johnson froze in the center aisle, her small body trembling as 30 pairs of eyes turned to stare at the pathetic sight before them. The once brown dress hanging off her thin frame was now a patchwork of faded colors, frayed edges, and poorly mended tears. A large hole gaped near her knee, despite the mismatched fabric hastily sewn over it that morning. The hem dragged on the gleaming church floor, filthy from where she'd tripped in the mud puddle outside. An accident her stepmother Vanessa had watched happen with cold satisfaction in her eyes. "Mama wouldn't recognize me now," Amara thought, tears welling as another hushed laugh reached her ears. The beautiful lavender dress her mother had bought before cancer stole her away was locked in Vanessa's closet, declared too good for a child like her. "Move, girl. You're blocking the aisle," Vanessa hissed, her manicured hand digging painfully into Amara's shoulder. She herself was immaculate in a cream designer suit, not a hair out of place in her sleek updo. "And stop that sniffling. You're embarrassing your father." Her father, James Johnson, walked ahead without looking back, his attention focused on greeting Pastor Williams. Once a loving dad who'd read bedtime stories and braided Amara's hair, he'd grown distant since marrying Vanessa, working longer hours and barely noticing how his once vibrant daughter withered under his new wife's cruelty. Look at Vanessa Johnson, dressed like she's going to a fashion show while that poor child looks like she dressed from a dumpster, Mrs. Patterson whispered loudly to her friend. "They say the mother's inheritance was supposed to go to the girl, but somehow the new wife got control of it all," came the whispered reply. Amara slid into the pew, making herself as small as possible, feeling the rough fabric scratch against her skin. This morning's humiliation replayed in her mind. "This is what you're wearing," Vanessa had announced, tossing the ragged dress onto Amara's bed while hiding the lavender dress behind her back. "Please, no," Amara had begged. "It's Blessing Sunday. Everyone dresses nice. Nice things are for deserving children," Vanessa had sneered. "Children who don't sneak around trying on their dead mother's clothes." When Amara had tried to reach for her mother's jewelry box, the only other keepsake she had left, Vanessa slapped her hand away so hard it left marks. "You touch that again, and it disappears like your mother's photos did," she'd threatened. Now in the church pew, Amara's hands shook as she tried to smooth the wrinkled fabric. The whispering continued around her. "That woman treats her like Cinderella. James is blind if he can't see what's happening. Poor Eliza must be turning in her grave." Suddenly, from behind, someone tapped Amara's shoulder. It was Lily, a girl from Sunday school, holding out a clean tissue. "Don't cry," Lily whispered kindly. "Jesus still sees you even in a torn dress." Amara took the tissue with trembling fingers, but before she could reply, Vanessa's hand clamped down on her wrist, fingernails digging in painfully. "Smile," she commanded through clenched teeth. "Everyone is watching." The church fell silent as Pastor Williams approached the pulpit. "Today we welcome a special guest, a son of our own community, who has returned to bless us after finding great success. Brother Marcus King has come home." Murmurs rippled through the congregation as a tall, imposing man in an impeccably tailored suit rose from the back pew. Despite his obvious wealth, there was something humble in his bearing, something kind in his eyes as they swept across the gathered faithful, until those eyes landed on Amara. Marcus King froze mid-step, his composed expression cracking. He stared at the little girl in the tattered dress, at her tear-streaked face, at the way she hunched as if trying to disappear. Then his gaze shifted to Vanessa's hand, gripping Amara's wrist, to the red marks visible on the child's skin. Amara looked up, meeting his eyes, and something passed between them. A jolt of recognition that neither understood. "Brother King?" Pastor Williams prompted. But Marcus King remained rooted in place, his eyes never leaving Amara as recognition dawned. His voice, when it finally came, silenced the entire church. "That's Eliza's daughter," he said, his deep voice echoing through the stunned congregation. "And someone's going to explain why my niece looks like she's been dressed in rags while her stepmother wears Prada." Vanessa's hand fell away from Amara's wrist as if burned. James Johnson turned, confusion etched across his face. And Amara, hardly daring to believe what she'd just heard, whispered a single word that carried to every corner of the suddenly silent church. "Uncle?" The sanctuary fell into a silence so profound that the only sound was the rustle of a Bible page turning somewhere in the back pews. Marcus King stood in the center aisle, his commanding presence making the ornate church seem suddenly small. The expensive watch on his wrist caught the light from the stained glass windows as he pointed directly at Vanessa. "I asked a question," he said, each word measured and precise. "Why is my niece, my dead sister's only child, dressed like she's been picking through trash, while you look like you're headed to a photo shoot?" Vanessa recovered quickly, rising to her feet with practiced grace. "Mr. King, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Amara spilled juice on her good dress this morning. This was all we had as a backup." Her smile was saccharine, but her eyes were cold. "And I don't believe we've met. I'm sure I would remember my husband mentioning a brother-in-law." James Johnson finally found his voice, standing awkwardly between his wife and the stranger claiming to be his brother-in-law. "Marcus King? Eliza never mentioned a brother named Marcus." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "She wouldn't have. Not after what happened." He took a step closer to Amara, who stared up at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. "But she would have shown you the photos. The ones of us as children. The ones where I'm holding baby Amara at the hospital the day she was born." James shook his head slowly. "There are no photos. There was a fire in our storage unit last year. Everything was lost." "How convenient," Marcus replied, his gaze shifting back to Vanessa, whose composed facade was beginning to crack. "Especially since I know my sister kept those albums in her bedside table, not in storage." Amara's small voice broke through the tension. "The blue box with the silver stars? Mama's special pictures?" Marcus knelt down to her level, his expression softening. "That's right, Amara. Your mama kept everything in that blue box. Her wedding photos, pictures of her holding you as a baby, and yes, pictures of me. Your Uncle Marcus." "Vanessa said there was no blue box," Amara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She said I made it up because I missed Mama too much." A collective gasp rippled through the congregation. Mrs. Patterson's loud, "Well, I never," cut through the murmurs, and Pastor Williams stepped down from the pulpit, sensing the situation was spiraling beyond a simple family disagreement. Vanessa's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. You can't just walk in here and make accusations." "The box is in her closet," Amara interrupted, her voice stronger now. "Behind her winter boots. I saw it when I was helping put away the laundry, but she caught me looking and—" She stopped suddenly, her hand unconsciously moving to touch her cheek. Marcus's gaze hardened as he noticed the faint yellowish mark on Amara's face, partially hidden by her hair. He stood up slowly, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "Did she hit you, Amara?" he asked quietly. Before Amara could answer, James stepped between them, his face ashen. "Now wait just a minute. Vanessa would never—" "She does," came another small voice from the congregation. It was Lily, the girl who had offered Amara the tissue. "I've seen the bruises when we change for gym class. Amara says she falls a lot, but I know what bruises from falling look like. My dad's a doctor." Pastor Williams placed a steadying hand on Marcus's shoulder, sensing the fury building in the man. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in my office." "No," Marcus stated firmly. "This happens right here, right now, in front of witnesses." He turned to face the congregation. 3 years ago, my sister Eliza died of cancer. Before she passed, she made me promise to watch over her daughter. But I was overseas building my company, and by the time I returned, James had remarried and moved. I've spent the last year searching for them." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a folded document. "This is Eliza's will. In it, she left a trust fund for Amara's care and education. A trust fund of over $2 million that I, as trustee, never authorized to be touched." His gaze burned into Vanessa. Yet somehow, last month, someone attempted to transfer those funds to an offshore account. Care to explain that, Mrs. Johnson? Vanessa's composure shattered completely. "You have no proof that was me," she hissed, then immediately covered her mouth, realizing her mistake. James stared at his wife in horror. "Vanessa, what is he talking about? What money?" "The money she married you for," Marcus replied coldly. "The money she thought she could get by making you the legal guardian of Amara, after convincing you that your daughter had no other family." Vanessa grabbed her purse, suddenly desperate to leave. "This is slander! James, we're going home! Now!" But James stood frozen, looking between his wife and the stranger who seemed to know more about his family's finances than he did. "The private school you said we couldn't afford for Amara. The tutoring she needed after falling behind. You said we had to be careful with money. While she bought designer clothes and booked spa weekends, Marcus finished. Check your bank statements, James. I already have. Amara slowly stood up, her small shoulders squared, despite the ragged dress hanging from them. With trembling hands, she reached toward Marcus. I remember you, she said softly. You gave me a teddy bear with a purple ribbon. Mama said you were far away making important things, but that you loved me very much. Something broke in Marcus's stern expression. Without hesitation, he scooped Amara up into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. I'm so sorry, little star, he whispered, using Eliza's pet name for her daughter. I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. As Amara buried her face in her uncle's shoulder, sobbing with relief, Vanessa made a break for the door. She didn't make it 3 steps before Mrs. Patterson stuck out her cane, sending Vanessa sprawling across the polished church floor. Oops, the elderly woman said innocently. My arthritis is acting up something fierce today. Little black girl cried. Please, stepmom, everyone is laughing at my dress. Then Black Millionaire stood up in church and Hanland. Part 3. Chaos erupted in the sanctuary. Vanessa scrambled to her feet, her perfect cream suit now smudged with dust from the church floor, her face contorted with rage as she glared at Mrs. Patterson. You miserable old hag, she spat. Pastor Williams stepped forward quickly. That's enough, Mrs. Johnson. It's Mrs. Spencer, Vanessa snarled. I was somebody before I married into this family, and I'll be somebody after I leave it. She turned to James, who stood frozen in disbelief. You think I wanted this? To be stuck in a cramped house with a man who works 60 hours a week and a whiny brat who won't stop crying about her dead mother? James flinched as if she'd slapped him. You said you loved Amara. You said you wanted to be a family. I said what I needed to say to get what I wanted, Vanessa replied coldly. She glanced at Marcus, who still held Amara protectively in his arms. And I would have succeeded if Mr. Billionaire here hadn't shown up playing hero. Deacon Wilson moved to block the church exit. I believe the police should be involved at this point, he said gravely. Attempted theft of a minor's trust fund is a felony in this state. Marcus nodded. They're already on their way. I filed a report the moment I traced the attempted transfer. He looked at James, his expression softening slightly. I don't blame you, Johnson. Eliza loved you, and I know you loved her. But you've been blind to what's been happening to your daughter. James stumbled forward, reaching tentatively toward Amara. Baby girl, is it true? Has Vanessa been hurting you? Amara, her face still pressed against her uncle's shoulder, nodded slowly. Not just the hitting, she whispered. She threw away my school projects. She told my friends I didn't want to play with them anymore. She said, her voice broke. She said Mama died because she wanted to get away from me. A collective gasp rose from the congregation. Mrs. Patterson muttered something that sounded suspiciously like Satan in Prada pumps, while Lily's father, Dr. Thompson, stood up, his face thunderous. That's emotional abuse on top of physical. As a mandatory reporter, I'm obligated to contact Child Protective Services immediately. Vanessa's eyes darted around the church, seeking an escape route. Finding none, she turned back to James, her strategy shifting instantly. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached for his hand. James, darling, you can't believe this. I've been nothing but a loving mother to Amara. She's making this up for attention. You know how children are. Her voice had transformed into a pleading whimper. This man appears out of nowhere with wild accusations, and you're going to believe him over your own wife? James looked down at her manicured hand on his, and slowly pulled away. Where's the blue box, Vanessa? What? Eliza's blue box with the silver stars. Where is it? Vanessa's face hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Behind her winter boots, Amara said again, louder this time. In her closet. And Mama's jewelry is in the safe behind the painting in your office. The one you told Daddy was empty. James turned without another word and headed for the church exit. Vanessa called after him, panic rising in her voice. Where are you going? To find the truth, he answered without looking back. Marcus gently set Amara down, but kept a protective hand on her shoulder. Officer Davis should be here any minute, he said to Pastor Williams. I'd appreciate it if someone could find Amara something more suitable to wear. Mrs. Patterson was already removing her cardigan. This will do for now. Come here, child. As the elderly woman helped Amara wrap the oversized cardigan around her thin shoulders, the little girl looked up at her uncle. Are you really rich? She asked, a hint of wonder breaking through her tear-stained face. A smile, the first genuine one since he'd entered the church, crossed Marcus's face. Yes, Amara, I am. Is that why you came back? For the money Mama left me? Marcus knelt down to her level again, his expression serious. No, little star. I came back for you. The money is yours. It always was and always will be. I've been searching for you since I learned Eliza had passed. He glanced briefly at Vanessa, who stood rigid with fury near the altar. Some people made that very difficult. Pastor Williams approached with a small cup of water, which Amara accepted gratefully. Brother King, perhaps you could explain to us all how you came to find Amara today. It seems providential that you arrived on this particular Sunday. Marcus nodded, keeping his voice gentle for Amara's sake. I hired private investigators over a year ago when I couldn't locate James or Amara through normal channels. Last week, they finally found a lead, a marriage certificate for James Johnson and Vanessa Spencer. From there, we traced them to this address and this church. His jaw tightened. What I didn't expect was to find my niece being treated like Cinderella. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Vanessa suddenly lunged toward the side door, but two deacons moved quickly to block her path. You're making a terrible mistake, she hissed. I have friends in this town, important friends. None as important as the God you've been pretending to worship while abusing a child under his roof, Pastor Williams replied, his normally gentle voice steely. The church doors opened, and Officer Davis entered, followed by a woman in a crisp suit, who introduced herself as a representative from Child Protective Services. As they were briefed on the situation, James Johnson returned, his face ashen. In his hands, he carried a blue box with tarnished silver stars, its lid ajar to reveal photographs and mementos. It was exactly where Amara said, he whispered, his voice hollow. And this was hidden inside. He held up a letter, Eliza's flowing handwriting visible on the envelope. It's addressed to me, to be opened in case of her death. It explains everything. About Marcus, about the trust fund, about her wishes for Amara. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. She never wanted Amara to forget her uncle. She wrote that you promised to come back for her. Marcus nodded solemnly. And I always keep my promises. James handed the box to Amara, who clutched it to her chest like a lifeline. Carefully, reverently, she opened it wider and pulled out a photograph. A younger Marcus with his arm around Eliza, both of them smiling at the camera, with baby Amara cradled between them. I remember, Amara whispered, tracing her mother's face with her fingertip. Mama kept this by her bed. She said angels were watching over me. The CPS representative stepped forward, her face compassionate but professional. Amara, I need to ask you some questions about what's been happening at home. Is that okay? Amara looked up at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. I'll be right here the whole time, little star. I'm not going anywhere. As Officer Davis led Vanessa away, she turned back one last time, her face a mask of hatred. This isn't over, she spat. You'll regret the day you crossed me, Marcus King. Marcus met her gaze evenly. No, Vanessa. The only one with regrets here is you. You made one fatal mistake. And what's that? She sneered. Marcus placed his hand gently on Amara's shoulder. You messed with my family. The days following that fateful Sunday unfolded in a whirlwind of change for Amara. The church basement had been converted into a makeshift meeting room where police officers, social workers, and lawyers gathered to piece together the extent of Vanessa's deception. James sat through it all, his shoulders slumped with the weight of his failure to protect his daughter. She manipulated bank statements, the financial investigator explained, spreading documents across the table. Mrs. Johnson, or Spencer, as she now prefers, diverted nearly $75,000 from your joint accounts over the past 2 years. The attempted access of Amara's trust fund was just the latest in a pattern of financial abuse. James ran his hands over his face. I trusted her completely. I gave her access to everything because I thought... His voice broke. I thought she loved us. Marcus, who had barely left Amara's side since Sunday, placed a firm hand on James's shoulder. Predators like Vanessa are experts at manipulation. They target people in grief when they're most vulnerable. That doesn't excuse what I allowed to happen to my daughter, James replied bitterly. In the adjacent room, Amara sat with Dr. Corinne Phillips, a child psychologist specializing in trauma. The blue box with silver stars rested in her lap as she carefully showed the doctor each treasured photograph. This is Mama and me at the zoo, she explained, pointing to a smiling Eliza with a toddler-aged Amara on her shoulders. "And this is Uncle Marcus visiting us at Christmas. See my teddy bear? The one with the purple ribbon? Uncle Marcus says he's going to find me one just like it." Dr. Phillips nodded encouragingly. "You remember a lot about these pictures, Amara. That's wonderful." "Vanessa said I made them up," Amara said quietly, her finger tracing the outline of her mother's face. "She said if I talked about them, it meant I was crazy like Mama was at the end." Dr. Phillips made a careful note. "Your Mama wasn't crazy, Amara. She was very sick, and sometimes medicine can make people confused. That doesn't mean they're crazy." Amara looked up, her eyes suddenly fierce. "I know. Uncle Marcus told me Mama was the smartest person he ever knew. He said she helped him start his company with her ideas." The door opened, and Marcus peeked in. "How's it going in here, little star?" Dr. Phillips gave him a subtle nod, and he entered fully, taking a seat beside Amara. The change in the child's demeanor was immediate. Her posture straightened, her eyes brightened, and a small smile tugged at her lips. "Uncle Marcus, Dr. Phillips doesn't think I'm crazy either." Marcus's expression darkened momentarily before he schooled his features. "Of course you're not crazy, Amara. You're brilliant, just like your mother." A social worker named Ms. Rivera entered with a tablet in hand. "Mr. King, we've prepared the temporary custody papers as you requested. As Amara's designated guardian in her mother's will, and with Mr. Johnson's consent, you'll have joint custody until the courts make a final determination." Marcus signed the documents, then passed the tablet to James, who had followed Ms. Rivera into the room. James hesitated only briefly before adding his signature. "It's what's best for Amara," he said quietly. "I need to get my life in order, figure out how I missed so many signs." He knelt down to Amara's level. "But I promise, baby girl, I'm going to see you every weekend. We're going to rebuild what we had before." He couldn't bring himself to say Vanessa's name. Amara reached out and touched her father's cheek. "It's okay, Daddy. Uncle Marcus says we can all be a family together. Nobody has to be alone." Marcus nodded in confirmation. "My home is open to you both. In fact, I've already had the guest house prepared for you, James. You need to be close to Amara during this transition." For the first time in days, James's expression lightened. "You do that? After I failed her so badly?" "You're her father," Marcus replied simply. "And Eliza loved you. That's enough for me." Mrs. Patterson bustled in, carrying a large shopping bag. "Here we are. I hope these fit, sweetheart. Some of the church ladies and I picked them out special." Inside the bag were several new dresses, including a lavender one that made Amara gasp. "It looks just like Mama's special dress." "That's the idea, darling," Mrs. Patterson said with a wink. "Now why don't you try it on? We've all had enough of that rag Vanessa put you in." As Amara was led to a private area to change, Pastor Williams arrived with news. Vanessa's bail hearing just concluded. Given the severity of the charges, child abuse, financial fraud, attempted grand theft, the judge denied bail. She'll remain in custody until trial. "Good," Marcus said firmly. "What about her important friends she kept threatening would get her out?" Pastor Williams shook his head. "Seems they've all mysteriously forgotten her number. Amazing how quickly rats abandon a sinking ship." Officer Davis added, "We found evidence in her email that she'd been planning this for years. She specifically targeted James after reading about Eliza's death in the obituaries. She even researched Eliza's background, which is how she knew about the trust fund. And how she knew to keep me away," Marcus concluded grimly. "The restraining order she filed in James's name last year claiming I was a danger to Amara. That was all part of the plan." James looked up sharply. "What restraining order?" "The one with your forged signature," Officer Davis explained. "We found the practice sheets in her personal files. She was quite meticulous about copying your handwriting." James sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "How did I not see any of this?" "Because she made sure you were working overtime, exhausted and emotionally drained," Marcus replied. "Classic isolation tactics." She did the same to Amara, cutting her off from friends, making her doubt her own memories, even hiding her mother's keepsakes, all to make her more controllable. The door to the changing area opened, and Amara emerged in the lavender dress, her face transformed. She twirled once, the fabric floating around her thin frame. "Do I look like Mama?" she asked hopefully. "You look beautiful, little star," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like her." For the first time since Sunday, Amara's smile reached her eyes. She looked around at the adults gathered in the room. Her father, her uncle, Pastor Williams, Mrs. Patterson, even Officer Davis and Dr. Phillips, and something in her small shoulders relaxed. She was safe. She was believed. She was loved. "Uncle Marcus?" she asked, her voice suddenly shy. "Where are we going to live now?" Marcus knelt down to her level. "Well, I have a house right here in town. I bought it a month ago when my investigators narrowed down your location. It's a bit big for just one person, but I think it might be just right for a little girl who loves books and has a father and an uncle who adore her." "Is it far from my school?" Amara asked. "Actually," Marcus began with a small smile, "I was thinking you might like a fresh start. There's a wonderful school near my home with an excellent arts program. Your mother always said you had a gift for drawing." Amara's eyes widened. "I do. Mama used to put my pictures on the refrigerator every week, but Vanessa said they were messy and threw them away." James flinched at this new revelation, but Marcus continued smoothly. "Well, in my house, we'll have a whole wall just for your artwork. How does that sound?" "Like heaven," Amara whispered, then added more solemnly, "But what about my friends from church? Like Lily, who gave me the tissue." Mrs. Patterson chuckled. "Darling, you won't be rid of us that easily. Marcus's new house is only 3 blocks from the church. Lily can visit any time." Relief washed over Amara's face. She took a deep breath, squared her small shoulders, and asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her mind. "And Vanessa? Will she come back to hurt us again?" The adults exchanged glances, but it was Marcus who answered, his voice gentle but firm. "No, Amara. Vanessa is going to prison for a very long time. She can never hurt you or your father again. I promise." Amara nodded, processing this information with a wisdom beyond her years. Then, with the resilience only children possess, she brightened and asked, "Can we go see our new house now? Does it have a garden? Mama always wanted a garden." Marcus smiled, tears shimmering in his eyes. "Yes, little star. It has the biggest garden you've ever seen, and it's all ready for you to plant whatever your heart desires." 2 weeks later, Amara stood in front of the full-length mirror in her new bedroom, barely recognizing the girl who stared back at her. The lavender dress from Mrs. Patterson had been just the beginning. Now her closet was filled with clothes that actually fit. Beautiful dresses, comfortable play clothes, and even a special outfit for her first day at her new school tomorrow. But it wasn't just the clothes that had transformed her. For the first time in years, Amara stood tall, her shoulders no longer hunched in anticipation of criticism. The dark circles under her eyes had faded, and her hair, once hastily braided by her own small hands because Vanessa refused to touch it, was now styled in neat, intricate cornrows with purple beads that matched her favorite dress, courtesy of Ms. Diana, Marcus's personal assistant, who had quickly appointed herself Amara's unofficial fairy godmother. "Amara, breakfast is ready," her father called from downstairs. The Johnson King household had settled into a comfortable routine. James had taken a leave of absence from his job to focus on healing his relationship with Amara, while Marcus managed his business empire mostly from home to spend time with his newfound family. The guest house had remained empty, as James had instead taken a bedroom down the hall from Amara's, ensuring she could find him easily if nightmares woke her, which they often did. Amara bounded down the spiral staircase, taking in the warm scent of cinnamon and maple syrup that permeated the air. In the expansive kitchen, her father stood at the stove flipping pancakes, while Uncle Marcus reviewed documents at the island counter, a cup of coffee in his hand. "Good morning, little star," Marcus greeted her with a warm smile. "Ready for the big tour today?" Amara nodded eagerly. Before starting at her new school, Marcus had arranged for her to visit the Eliza Johnson Memorial Children's Hospital, a project he had been working on in secret for years, named after her mother. "Is it really a whole hospital just for kids?" she asked, climbing onto a stool beside him. "It is," Marcus confirmed. "Your mother always wanted to create a place where children could heal in an environment that didn't feel scary. She was working on the initial designs before she got sick." James set a plate of star-shaped pancakes in front of Amara. "Your mama would stay up late sketching ideas for kid-friendly hospital rooms. She wanted colorful walls and jungle themes instead of the sterile white rooms she worked in. And windows," Marcus added. "Eliza always said healing happened faster with sunshine." Amara drizzled maple syrup over her pancakes, her eyes thoughtful. Will the children there have to wear those scratchy hospital gowns? Mama hated those. Marcus and James exchanged a meaningful look over her head. Actually, Marcus began carefully, we've designed special hospital pajamas with superheroes and animals on them. They're soft and colorful, but still work for medical examinations. Like Mama would have wanted, Amara said with satisfaction. As they ate breakfast, the doorbell rang. Ms. Diana entered with a tablet in hand, looking uncharacteristically flustered. Mr. King, you need to see this immediately, she said, placing the tablet in front of him. Marcus's expression darkened as he read the headline on the screen. Jilted wife claims millionaire Marcus King framed her in conspiracy to steal fortune from tragic widow's daughter. Vanessa, James muttered, his hands tightening on his coffee mug. Marcus quickly swiped the tablet away before Amara could see it. Diana, please take Amara to the sunroom to finish her breakfast. Maybe show her those designs for the butterfly garden. Recognizing the gravity in his tone, Diana smiled brightly at Amara. Come on, sweetie. Wait until you see the special flowers we're planning to attract monarch butterflies. Once Amara was out of earshot, Marcus turned the tablet back to James. The article featured a jailhouse interview with Vanessa, who was now claiming she had discovered Marcus's scheme to take control of Amara's trust fund and had been silenced before she could protect her stepdaughter. She's desperate, Marcus said grimly. Her lawyer must have told her how much evidence we have against her. James scrolled through the article, his face growing paler. She's saying I was in on it too, that I was an absent father who neglected Amara and is now trying to save face by blaming everything on her. No one will believe this, Marcus assured him, though his own expression was troubled. We have documented evidence, multiple witnesses, and Amara's testimony. But the damage to Amara, James began, his voice breaking. She's just starting to feel safe again. If she sees this, or if the kids at her new school hear about it, that won't happen, Marcus stated firmly. I've already instructed our legal team to file an emergency gag order. This interview violates several court restrictions already in place. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Michaels, initiate Protocol Delta on the Spencer case. Yes, immediately. And arrange for additional security at both the house and the hospital for today's visit. When he hung up, James was watching him with a mixture of awe and gratitude. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Marcus's expression softened. I promised Eliza I would protect her family if anything happened to her. I failed for 3 years. I won't fail again. In the sunroom, Amara was excitedly pointing out her favorite butterfly species in Diana's presentation when Pastor Williams arrived for his scheduled visit. The elderly pastor had been a steady presence in Amara's life during the transition, providing spiritual guidance and a sense of continuity from her old life to her new one. Good morning, Miss Amara, he greeted warmly. My, don't you look bright as sunshine today? Amara beamed. I'm going to see Mama's hospital today. Uncle Marcus built it just like she wanted. Pastor Williams's eyes crinkled with his smile. Indeed he did. Your Mama's dream to help children is now a reality, thanks to your uncle's dedication. Marcus and James joined them, their earlier tension carefully masked behind composed expressions. Pastor, Marcus acknowledged with a respectful nod. Thank you for coming. I think your presence today will be especially meaningful. The pastor's keen eyes noted the subtle undercurrent of concern in Marcus's voice. Is everything all right? We'll discuss it later, Marcus replied quietly. For now, let's focus on making this a special day for Amara. The hospital tour was nothing short of magical for Amara. From the moment they pulled up to the modern glass building with Eliza Johnson Memorial Children's Hospital etched in elegant letters across the entrance, she was transfixed. The lobby featured a massive aquarium wall filled with colorful fish, and the ceiling was painted to resemble a blue sky with fluffy clouds. Dr. Maya Patel, the hospital's chief administrator, greeted them warmly. Welcome, Amara. We've been so excited to meet you. Your mother's vision is at the heart of everything we've built here. As they toured the facilities, Amara's eyes grew wider with each new discovery. The children's rooms were themed like underwater adventures, space explorations, or safari journeys. The treatment rooms featured ceiling panels with twinkling stars that children could focus on during procedures. Even the X-ray machines were decorated to look like friendly robots. This is the art therapy room, Dr. Patel explained, showing them a bright space filled with easels, clay, and art supplies. We believe healing involves the whole child, body, mind, and spirit. Amara turned to Marcus, her eyes shining. Mama would have loved this. She did love it, Marcus replied softly. Every detail here came from her initial designs. I just made sure they were brought to life exactly as she imagined. In a private moment, while Amara was busy exploring the rooftop butterfly garden with her father and Pastor Williams, Dr. Patel pulled Marcus aside. The press is gathered at the south entrance, she informed him discreetly. They're asking about the allegations Ms. Spencer made in her interview. Marcus's jaw tightened. Has the gag order been served yet? Just 20 minutes ago, Dr. Patel confirmed. But the story's already circulating online. Keep them away from Amara at all costs, Marcus instructed. This day is about Eliza's legacy, not Vanessa's desperate attempts to save herself. When they rejoined the others, Amara was carefully holding a container with a monarch butterfly chrysalis, her face alight with wonder. Dr. Patel says I can come back when it hatches, she exclaimed. Can we, Uncle Marcus? Can we come watch it turn into a butterfly? Marcus smiled, pushing aside his concerns about Vanessa. Of course, little star. We'll come as often as you like. As they prepared to leave, a small commotion near the elevator caught their attention. A reporter had somehow bypassed security and was now hurrying toward them, microphone extended. Mr. King, is it true that you orchestrated this entire situation to gain control of your niece's inheritance? Did you frame Vanessa Spencer to... The reporter never finished his question. Pastor Williams stepped forward, his normally gentle demeanor replaced with thunderous authority. Young man, he boomed, you are in a place of healing, harassing a child who has already endured more suffering than you can imagine. If you have an ounce of decency, you will leave immediately. Security arrived swiftly, escorting the flustered reporter away. But the damage was done. Amara stood frozen, her small hands clutching the butterfly chrysalis container so tightly her knuckles had turned white. What did he mean? Uncle Marcus, she whispered. Did Vanessa say you did something bad? Marcus knelt down to her level, his eyes steady and honest. Vanessa is trying to avoid getting in trouble for the things she did, Amara. People who do wrong things often try to blame others when they're caught. Is she saying bad things about me too? Amara asked, her voice trembling. James joined them, placing a protective hand on Amara's shoulder. Baby girl, Vanessa is saying things that aren't true because she's scared. But you don't need to worry about that. The truth always comes out in the end. Amara considered this, her young face solemn. Then, with a wisdom that stunned the adults around her, she said, Mama always said lies are like soap bubbles. They might look pretty for a minute, but they pop when you touch them. The truth stays. Pastor Williams smiled gently. Your mama was right, child. And the truth here is that you are loved, you are safe, and nothing Vanessa says can change that. As they exited through a private entrance, Amara looked back at the hospital one last time, the butterfly chrysalis cradled carefully in her hands. In that moment, with the sunlight catching the golden letters of her mother's name on the building, she understood something important. Her mother's love had never truly left her. It had been waiting, dormant like the butterfly, ready to transform and take flight again through the people who truly cared for her. I'm ready to go home now, she said, reaching for her father's hand with one hand and her uncle's with the other. Our home.